Hello 8th grade science students, and welcome to our third video about the moon and moon phases. A phase is a different view of the moon sunlit half. We only see one side of the moon, which is the sunlit half, and it's the sunlight that we see on the moon as a reflection. We learned about that in the last unit. There's the dark side of the moon, which we will never see. Planetary satellites are small bodies that orbit around the planets. An example of a planetary satellite, which is a small body in orbit around a planet, is the moon. The moon orbits Earth. If you were to stand on Earth and you were to point up, you'd be pointing straight up in the air. If you were to point down, you're going to point straight towards the Earth, right? What happens if someone else is standing on the exact opposite side of Earth and they point up and then they point down? If they're pointing down, they're pointing towards you. So there really isn't necessarily an up and down. It just means we're going to talk about Earth's gravity. The gravity of Earth or gravity of other planets is that it's pulled towards the core or the center of the Earth or the center of that planet. So Earth's gravity is like the pull when we point up or down. So if we're pointing down, that's the same direction the pull of gravity is going to pull towards the Earth. Just like the satellite as the moon is pulled towards the Earth's center of gravity. Please pause to take notes. These are other moons from Earth, Mars, Jupiter, Saturn, Uranus, and Neptune. Earth, Venus, Mars, and Mercury have 0 to 2 moons. So the terrestrial planets, which are the rocky planets, they don't have that many moons. They're smaller planets too, but Jupiter, Saturn, Uranus, and Neptune have a lot of moons. Those are those gas giant planets that we looked at before, and they're huge. These gas giants, they have more of a gravitational pull because they're bigger and larger, and they're more dense, so they're going to have more moons or more objects that they pull towards the center of their gravity. The moon is Earth's natural satellite. So it's the Earth's natural satellite. It's what orbits the Earth. Gravity keeps the moon in orbit around the Earth, just like what I talked about earlier when I talked about pointing up and down. Earth's gravity keeps the moon pulled in. The moon gravity pulls it. The Earth's gravity pulls the moon in towards Earth as it rotates around. If we didn't have the gravity of the moon, gravity pulling on the moon would just go straight off forever. But the gravity of the Earth pulls the moon in. Pause to take notes. Moon phases. Remember, phases are the different views of the moon's lit half. So moon phases are the appearance of the illuminated, sunlit portion of the moon. What's illuminated by the sun through the reflection, just like a mirror. Moon phases are the appearance of the illuminated, sunlit portion of the moon, caused by the changing angles of the Earth, moon, and sun. The moon phases are caused by the changing angles of the Earth, moon, and sun. And on the bottom, there's a picture of a new moon and a crescent and a first quarter, full moon, last quarter, and then another new moon. We'll talk about those different phases in a minute. Pause to take notes. Here's pictures of how the moon rotates around the Earth. On the very top part is the first quarter, and then the very bottom is the third quarter. We'll talk about those. As the sunlight comes in from the right-hand side, we see parts of the moon as it rotates around the Earth. So there's a full moon when the sun is directly on the other side of the moon because there's full reflection of the sunlight. Naming phases of the moon. It's the change in shape. Waxing is the growing of the moon phases, and waning is the shrinking. So on the left side of this moon phase chart on the bottom, from new moon, which isn't visible, you have waxing, which is growing. From waxing crescent to first crescent to waxing gibbous. To the full moon, which remember it's on the other side of the sun, so it has a perfect reflection of the sun. Waning, there's a waning gibbous, last quarter or third quarter, and waning crescent to a new moon that's not visible. Pause to take notes. Naming phases of the moon. So the shapes of the moon, we just talked about that on the bottom of the last page, but there's a new moon, a crescent, a quarter, a gibbous, and a full moon. These phases of the moon is how there is seen when the moon rotates around the earth. Pause to take notes. The moon's gravity causes the tides on the earth. Tides occur because the moon's gravity changes the shape of the earth's ocean. So they have high tide and low tide. All these things are from the moon's gravity that causes the tides from the earth, because the earth pulls the moon into its center of gravity. Pause to take notes.